Hello and welcome back. So now we're going to look at part 2. This is where we left off in part 1, and I actually went through and made a couple of changes. I just kind of grouped these remaining rectangles that we had so that as I go about building this out in actual HTML, we can see which rectangle is which and what we need in terms of our markup to make sure that everything matches what we've laid out here. So without further ado, let's get started building some code. So I'm gonna do this. Well, I'll show you how I would normally do it. So what I have is a folder in my documents folder. So just in documents, I have a grow with Google folder, and then a FEND folder, and then a project 1 folder. And I just created this like normal I would normally do in my computer, just creating folders within folders within folders, that kind of thing. This is the actual path, C:, users, my user, my documents folder, my grow with Google folder, a FEND folder, and then a project 1 folder. Now you don't have to follow this path. Like you can put a folder anywhere you want. You can put it on your desktop if you want to. That's fine. It doesn't really matter where the folder is. But what's important to understand is that this folder, this project 1 folder, is going to be the root folder for my quote-unquote portfolio website that we're going to build here. So what will happen is all of the files and all of the subfolders that I need in order to build this portfolio site will go into this root project 1 folder. And I can create those subfolders right from here if I want to. I can also create them inside of my editor window, which I will show you here in a second. That's where we'll do all of our creation from. So once I have this root folder created, wherever I put it, whether it's on my desktop, whether it's in my documents folder, whether it's in some folders, in some other folders, wherever it is, the important thing to remember is where it's located, right? Because you're going to need it later on. You're going to need it to submit the project, whether you submit the project as a zip file or whether you submit the project through a GitHub repo or however you want to do it. You're going to need access to all of this, all these files and all these folders. Now I'm going to follow kind of a best practice kind of thing, not really a best practice, but a common practice that we actually use where I work. And so what I'm going to do in order to get to this folder, like I want to open this root folder in my editor, and then my editor will know to work inside of this root folder. And I prefer to use Visual Studio Code, but there's other editors. I also have Sublime. I have Sublime Text 2, and here's Sublime Text 2, and I've got some things set up here for work-related stuff. But I could use this as well. I find that Visual Studio Code has better code completion for just HTML stuff, and I like the way it works better. So I have a couple of options. I can launch Visual Studio Code like I would normally. And oops, it's in the wrong window. Let me pull that over here. So if I launch Visual Studio Code, this is what I get. I'm just going to go full screen, and this is like the welcome screen, and it's kind of like, what do I do from here? And you have options. Like right here, it says Start. You can open a file, you can open a folder, you can add a workspace folder. You can see the recent stuff that I've opened, right? All of these things. And what I want to do is open a folder. I can click on this to open a folder. I can come up here to the File menu, and I can open a folder. Open a folder right here. I can use the keyboard shortcut Control-K or Control-O. Or I can click this icon right here, the Explorer icon, or use Control-Shift-E. It would all be like Command if it wasn't if it was on a Mac. Anything you see Control on my Windows, if you're on a Mac, it's Command. And right there's a big blue button, Open Folder. So I can do it all that way, or I can close this window, and I'll show you a quicker way. Once I'm in my root folder here, for me it's called Project 1. when I installed Visual Studio Code, it gave me an option to add a shortcut to the menu, to the context menu. So if I right-click inside of this folder here, I get, this is the context menu, or the right-click menu in Windows. And you can see I have an option to open with code right here. And if I click that, oh, it's in the wrong window again. Then now I have Project 1 is already open in my workspace. Now I still get the welcome screen, and it's very hard to notice that Project 1 is actually open, but you can see that there is a Project 1 folder here. If I twirl the arrow so it's in line with Project 1, I really can't do anything with it. But if I open the arrow, and it's open by default, then I have the option to create a new file, create a new folder, can refresh the list view in here, or I can collapse all of the, if there's any like subfolders, it would collapse them. Okay, so that's how you would get the editor to know, okay, this is the folder I want you to work in. Okay, so what we're going to need, we're obviously going to need a file for our portfolio page. So typically when you're working with, this portfolio, like if we're going to put it up on the internet, then it needs to work off of a web server somewhere. And web servers are designed and built to look for very specific file names to start with. This comes from way back in the day when web servers were built. The first page that you want to, that they are by default will try to look for, is a page called index. And if you're just working with static HTML pages, then it will look for an index.html file. If you're doing something in like PHP or .NET or Java or some other language, then it will be index.aspx for .NET, index.php for PHP, and etc., etc., etc. Not quite sure actually how Java does it, because I don't know Java, and it's all weird and foreign to me. So what we're going to do, since we're working with just an HTML file, we're going to create a new file. And all I'm going to do, I can right-click in here and go New File. I can click this button and go New File. I can go File, New File, New File. Right? I have tons of options, right? Just to create a new file. And I'm just going to call it index.html, like so, and hit Enter. And there's my index.html. Now, this is important because the file extension, the part after the dot, gives Visual Studio like clues as to what type of code hinting to give you with this file type. It knows it's an HTML file, so you're going to get all kinds of, it's called Intellisense. Like if I just do an open bracket, here's all my HTML element stuff, like all kind of things, even like B tags. B tags are old and old school, like HTML2, something like that, 3. They're really old school tags. Shouldn't use B tags anymore, by the way. Right, anchor tags. And you see like Visual Studio says, hey, if the element A has an href attribute, then it represents a hyperlink, a hypertext anchor labeled by its contents. Just little information that will give you, because it knows that this is an HTML file because you named it properly. Okay. So to start, we're just going to start with our index.html file, and then we'll get into dealing with what's called assets later on. That's going to be our images and any like CSS style sheets or any JavaScript files that we might need. Those are your assets. I should remember that name. If you're writing down, taking notes, assets. Take that note. Make that a note. So what I want to do is I want to build out the basic structure of an HTML5 document. Now, the problem is I've been working in a content management system for about 8 years, and I don't ever have to build that out by hand because our content management system builds it for me. I did have to build it at some point 8 years ago when I started building the content management system. but I don't do that stuff anymore. It does it for me. So I don't know all the syntax and all of the order of things. I just let my CMS handle that for me. So you would think like, oh man, there's no way I can get started with this thing. I'll have to go copy and paste it from somewhere. Well, luckily, Visual Studio Code and Atom will do it. I think Sublime will do it too. Most of your editors that are out there will do what I'm about to show you for you automatically. You just might have to research what it is you need to do to get them to do it. So I don't think this comes from any plugin or extension that I have. When it comes to Visual Studio Code, if you want to install an extension into it, you want to use this bottom icon here. This is your extensions icon. You'll click on that, and I'm going to resize this so you can see. Fancy little icons and such and things. And bring this down so we can get a list. Yeah, this is all the extensions I have installed. This is my home Visual Studio. The one I have at work has a lot more extensions, but you can see I have this weird Cold Fusion one because that's what we use at work. Indent Rainbow, I recommend this highly, and you'll see this at work. While we're typing the code, you'll see what this does. This really helps you to keep track of your indentation to make sure that everything is indented right. This JavaScript, CSS, HTML formatter, as long as you're working in just JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, I recommend this extension. However, if you have to work with a different language, I don't recommend it because it doesn't understand anything else. Yeah, I don't have this at work because it really screws up my Cold Fusion really bad. Live server compiler or live Sass compiler. This is really handy if you're working with Sass. We're not going to do that, so I'm going to skip over that. And then live server. Live server is really handy if you're working with like a some kind of module system or node system or something like that. We don't necessarily need it for a plain HTML file because you can just open HTML files in your browser right from the file system, but we'll use live server so you guys can see how it works. Some Sass highlighting, but we're not going to use that. SFTP for uploading stuff and downloading things. This is my custom Monokai theme that I made for Visual Studio Code. It's custom because it's customized for some Cold Fusion stuff that we do at work. And then this great icons thing I have, but it keeps updating and changing the icons that I have, and I don't like it. So I use it, but I don't use it. I don't know. It's hard to explain. So those are my extensions, the ones that you're going to, if you wanted to use them, I would recommend Indent Rainbow, the JS, CSS, HTML formatter, and live server. Okay. So I don't have any special code snippet type extensions, except for this Sass one. I don't know if snippets comes with. Yeah, snippets comes with this. And the reason that's important is because what I'm going to show you is just baked right into Visual Studio Code, and I don't have anything special going on to make it do what it's going to do. Okay, so here we go. Just hold on to your seats because I'm about to blow your mind. So what I want is an HTML5 document, and if I just start typing HT, that's all I need. And you can see that Visual Studio Code is like, oh, you want the HTML tag. So it's going to give me an Emmet abbreviation. If you're not familiar with Emmet, just Google Emmet. Just go to emmet.io and feast your eyes on that amazingness because it's amazing. I don't want this first option because all it's going to give me is the HTML tag, right? So I'm going to hit the down arrow. Oh, there's another Emmet abbreviation. I don't know why it's in here twice. It just is. This is a simple HTML5 starting point, the HTML language basics. Well, look at this. This is what it's going to give me. The doc type of HTML, my HTML tag, my head tag, my character set, the XUA compatible meta tag, a page title, my meta viewport tag, automatic responsiveness. That's amazing. It's going to hook up, it's going to hook up a style sheet that I may or may not even use, and it's going to hook up a JavaScript file that I may or may not even use, and then it's going to give me a body tag, and I think it's going to close all that stuff out as well. So this looks really good right here. I wonder what the difference is between this and the HTML5 one. So I'm going to hit my down arrow one more time. Oh, well, this is an Emmet abbreviation that does pretty much the same thing. It just doesn't link the CSS or the JavaScript file. It looks like it does close out the body and HTML tag. So these are really handy snippets right here. And then there's like an XML. We don't need XML. We're not going to deal with that. So I'm going to use this HTML5 one. I actually kind of like this one because it has the style sheet already ready to go. I'm going to see what this one does. So I'm going to select it. Hey, what I'm going to do is hit tab. I think that's right. Boom, tab. Now what you'll see is like page title looks like it's highlighted, main.css looks like it's highlighted, and main.js looks like it's highlighted. So what I can do is those are stopping points in the snippet, and I can hit tab to change them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start typing, and you'll see the page title will update. So I'm going to call this Joe's, amazing, if I can type, portfolio. So that's the page title, and that's what shows up in the tab in like Chrome or Firefox or whatever. That's the title tag. It shows up in the tab, and when you bookmark a page, it shows up there as well. So if I hit tab, it's going to jump. You can see my cursor is like right here at the end. It's like right in here. If I hit tab, it'll jump down to this main.css, and that lets me rename the file if I don't want to call it main. I'm actually going to call it styles.css. And then if I hit tab again, it takes me down to this main.js, which we're not even going to need, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And now I can go to the body tag, and bada boom, bada bing, I've got my basic document structure already set, like literally basic. Like this is the most basic skeleton you could ever imagine. Now, what you'll notice is that I have no indentation. That doesn't exist. And for some reason, my code editor does not want to read my editor.config, and it has set me to the dreaded spaces. I want to indent using tabs because I love tabs, and I'm going to configure my tab size. Now, when I save this, you'll notice that on the left here, there is these couple of lines right here are indented. And there's this weird coloring going on right here and right here because there's an indent here. That's that indent rainbow extension. And you'll see here, as soon as I save this file, my JS, CSS, HTML formatter is going to kick in and didn't do what I thought it would do. I thought it would indent better than it did, but it didn't. Oh well. So I'm just going to highlight this and press tab. And now you see there's two different colors, because as I keep indenting, I'll just do some more just to show you the different colors. As I keep indenting, the indent rainbow creates some pretty little colors. Oh, it's so pretty. But we don't want to indent this much. Like this is not where we want to go. All I gotta do is save. I think it'll take it back. That's amazing. Not so much, because I actually wanted it to be indented once, but that's okay. So there's your basic HTML structure, right? Like very simple, very basic. And I didn't have to do anything. I just picked a snippet in my editor, and it was like, here you go. This is what you're looking for. Yes, you're right. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, of course, I still have the creative freedom to add in anything else that I need, like extra style sheet tags or some more JavaScript stuff or any other meta tags that need to go in there. I can still do all of that. I can still edit this and change it the way I want to. So right now, if I try to preview this document in my browser, it's going to throw an error because I've linked to this style sheet, and this style sheet does not exist. Right? I'll get the dreaded 404 file not found, and we don't want that. However, I don't want to just put my style sheet right here in the root of my document, because I'm going to have more than just styles. I'm going to have some images, and I might have some JavaScript, things like that. So what I want to do, and this is kind of a common practice. There's really no best practice, but this is a common practice. What I'm going to do in the root here is just simply create a folder. And my folder name is going to be assets. I think I mentioned that before, just a few minutes ago. And then assets is going to hold all of my assets, right? And my assets consist of a folder, another folder inside of assets that holds all of my CSS. And another folder inside of assets that, whoops, hey, careful now. It was going to create it inside of CSS. That's not what I wanted. So here, okay, I'm going to redo this. I'm going to redo this and show you guys what that was. Okay. So inside of assets, I want a CSS folder. So I go new folder and I do CSS and I hit enter. Now what's happened is my CSS folder is actually selected. And I know it's hard to tell in Visual Studio Code because that's just the way it is, and that's the way the color theme is that I have set up for Visual Studio Code, which is just a default color theme. I have a custom color theme at work, and it makes it a little simpler to tell which one is selected. What I actually want to do is not select CSS, but select assets. The problem that I have with it is when you click on it, it closes. I don't like that. So with assets selected, what I want to do is create another folder. Oh, it still put it in CSS. Okay, be stubborn. That's fine. So this is going to be like images. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, it's in the right spot. Yes, it's in the right spot. It looked like it wasn't. It totally looked like it wasn't. Okay. So assets, CSS, and images. And that way I only have like one folder here in my root. And it just kind of keeps things a little bit more organized. I know that assets consists of CSS and images. So in this CSS folder, obviously, I'm going to have my file. So I create a new file, and I call it styles.css. And I hit enter, and there's my file. Now Visual Studio Code says, hey, you're going to need this file, so it opened it up for me. Actually, it might have opened it because I hit enter, but either way, I got to go back to index.html, and I'm actually going to close this welcome tab because we don't need that open anymore. We know, whoops, I closed two tabs. There we go. Now what's going to happen, this link tag that I've set up links to my styles.css, but it doesn't point to the right file. It's looking for styles.css in the root of my project, and that's not where my styles.css exists, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to modify this. I'm going to highlight it and delete it. Now, here's the cool part about Visual Studio Code. If I start to type assets, Visual Studio Code says, hey, you have a folder named assets. I bet that's what you want, isn't it? So I hit enter, and it gives it to me. And then it says, hey, you have these two folders inside of assets. I bet you want one of those, don't you? And then I say, yes, I want CSS. So I hit enter, and then it says, oh, look, I found this file called styles.css in that CSS folder. Is that what you want? And then I just hit enter, and it's there. The path is already set up. So what's really cool is that Visual Studio Code has that like folder inspection, or I don't know, path inspection. I don't know what the name. There's actually a name for it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I have to go look up it in the documentation. But that's a really cool feature that I like about Visual Studio Code, and other editors do it too. I never was able to do it in Sublime. I'm sure probably Adam does it too, maybe, kind of, sort of. But anyway, I like that little feature. It's pretty cool. So it links up my CSS. So now, if I save this, we have our basic structure all set up and ready to go. And just to test, to make sure that everything works, I'm going to do the classic h1 tag with hello world, because you can't do, if I can spell, you can't do a coding project without a hello world program. This is our hello world program for an HTML page. So we save that, and all I'm going to do, because I could go back to the folder, right? Now you can see that in my actual hard drive, just like what we have done here in the Project Explorer, right? I've got my index.html. I have an assets folder. Inside of assets, I have CSS and images, and inside of CSS, I have my styles.css. So everything we did in the editor has actually persisted or happened or saved itself to my hard drive. It's working on the disk itself. Okay? And you can see that this index.html is set to open with Chrome by default. So if I double click it, sure enough, Chrome will open. It's in the wrong monitor. Hold on, let me drag it over here. Get over there. Chrome will open, and there's my H1. Hello world. Hello world, how are you? If I inspect, you can see I have my head section. I'm going to minimize the page in the background and just move this over to here. Oops, this is in the way as well. I'm going to minimize that, and we can compare. No, don't do that. Here we go. Can I make it? I made it. There it is. HTML tag, check. Doc type, check. Head, check. Character set, check. Compatibility tag, whatever, check. Title, Joe's Amazing Portfolio, check. Viewport tag, style sheet linked, no 404 errors in the console, check. Body tag, hello world, body tag HTML. Boom! We've created a website. Amazing. This is an amazing website. No? Okay, maybe not. I'm going to close this. And I'm just going to minimize this because we'll come back to that. So that's the basics. Like that's how, this is why we want to use code editors rather than something like Notepad. When I first started doing this back in the day, that's all we had was Notepad. It was pretty epic. No, it was pretty awful. So here we go. What we want to do is we want to take our Photoshop document. Well, we want to take our mockup that we've broken down into these boxes, and we want to recreate them. So what I'm going to do is turn off a lot of them because I only need certain ones to start with. Oops, that's actually the one I want. All right, so we're going to start with this wrapper element box border looking thingy that we did in our design because it looks amazing. And we said that this was going to be some kind of HTML5 header tag, right? That's what we want that to be. So back in my editor, come back to here, and I'm going to do the header. And this is another Emmet abbreviation. I could do the actual tag header, close it, and then Visual Studio Code will close it for me. And that's awesome, right? So there's our header tag. That's the first little box that we created in our mockup, or in our design when we broke it down the other day. And then we said inside of this, what we want to have are two more containers. One on the left, one on the right. Right? So that's what we're going to add next. Inside of our header, we're going to do a div. Really simple. And then we need another div. There we go. So far, so good. Right? Then we said inside of our div, inside of our logo div here, we needed the actual image tag. Right? And then on this side, we said that we needed two text-based elements, like an H1 for SEO purposes, and then maybe a paragraph tag. So if we do inside the first div, an image tag, image source is going to be blank, alt is going to be blank, and there we go. Image tags are self-closing tags, so we just do this slash and the angle bracket. And then we said inside this div, we wanted two text-based elements, an H1 for SEO purposes and a paragraph tag. There we go. So that looks like the beginning of our document, according to what we broke it down to in the first video. Awesome. That's a good start. We'll worry about adding in the actual content once we get the full document structure laid out. So that takes care of the header, and I think we're done with that. And now we want to do the main tag. The main tag is going to hold all of our content, right? So after our header, we need a main. And I'll just do, oops, it doesn't like main. Nope, it doesn't like main at all. There we go, main tag, right? And then we go back and look at our structure again. After our main, we had our hero image. Now, we can just put the image We'll just do that for now. So we'll just do an image with a source of blank for now, an alt of blank for now, and we'll close that off. Too easy. Go back to our mockup, and inside our main, now we need to start our featured work area. So featured work, the actual, let me get rid of some of these. This one. So we need this text tag, and I think in order of precedence for header tags, the next one would be, because we have an H1, our next header tag would be an H2. So we'll just make an H2 just like that. All right. If we come back to our mockup, we have this. Oh, that's what I forgot. Almost forgot. Our featured work all needs to be inside a container. So back in our editor, what I'm going to do is create a section tag. That's an HTML5 tag. Oh, well, check this out. This is cool too. So I actually need, okay, someone asked this in Slack today. I'm sorry, someone didn't ask it in Slack. Someone posted their portfolio in Slack, and I reviewed it for them. And it made me think of this. That what they did is they created two sections. One section was their featured work at the bottom, but the title, the actual text, featured work, was outside of the section, inside a div. I'm going to cut this, and I'll show you what it looked like. It was a div, and it had some class on it, and then they had their H2 in here, and it said featured work, and then underneath here, they had like all their images. And that looks, visually, it looks okay. But when you run it through the validator, it does throw a warning. And the reason is because the HTML5 section tag, in order to use a section tag, the first child element, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first child element of a section needs to be one of the 6 header tags. Heading tags. This is a header tag. The HTML5 header tag. These, like H1, H2, all of those H tags, we get the idea. All these H tags, these are heading tags. So there's the header tag, and then there's heading tags, right? Try not to get the terminology confused there. It's very easy to do. I did it just a second ago. So the first child element of any section tag needs to be a heading tag. So we're going to do an H2. And that's a W3C validation warning. It's not an error, but it is a warning. And the reason is because of how screen readers interpret these section tags. They need to have every section should have its own heading that belongs to it, that defines like what this section is for screen reader purposes. So where am I? Oh, back to the PSD. That was a little sidetrack thing, but it's an important thing to remember going forward. It's not, like I said, it's just a warning, but it is, a best practice. If you're going to use a section, then it needs to have a heading so that screen readers can know what that section is about. Like that's kind of the idea. All right, so we have our section, we have our section title, and now we can work on the first featured work here. Let me open that up, and let's just start with the outermost container. So what we have is, in our featured work, we have a div of some kind that holds the entire markup, right? This big container div. Did I skip something? I may have. No? My markup isn't looking the way I thought it would. Okay, maybe we'll go back and fix it. So let's just start, and we'll call this, well, let's do a div that contains everything, right? And then inside that div is going to be an image and 2 text elements. Okay, so we can do an image, source, it's blank, alt, it's blank. And then we need a text element, so in order of our header tags, we can do an h3, that would be the next header tag, and then another p tag, simple paragraph. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this. And because this is just going to duplicate itself 3 times, we're just going to paste it 2 more times. And that concludes all of our markup, I do believe. Yes. Now, I did notice something. So when I analyzed this and broke it down, right, initially, this is like at first glance, like when I first think of it, I think this is how I'm going to build the structure. But after building the structure, I realized this is close, but there's actually something missing. And the something that's missing is, and I just know this because I know how I'm going to style it in the future. But you'll be able to figure it out too. So what's missing is I need a container that wraps. Oh, I still got my box here. I'm going to change this color to like a purple. Yeah, purple's good. Right. What I want, because it's not going to look right, but I need to fit it in here. I need a container that's going to hold all 3 of these boxes. Right, and that's for the purposes of Flexbox, which we'll get into once we get into the styling. So I kind of left that out in the initial analyzing of the mockup, but that's okay because my initial analysis of the mockup is not set in stone. I might realize that once I get into building out the markup, I might realize, oh, okay, I need this extra element, or I need this to be in a different place, or I need to do this a little bit differently, kind of thing. And that's perfectly fine. That's how it works. So what I'm going to do, I have my section, and I have my header, and then I have my 3 featured works, right? I'm going to actually wrap these 3 featured works in another div. And I know, we talked about divitis and trying to avoid divitis. That's very important. This is not an example of divitis. I'll show you one here in a little bit. So I'm just going to create another wrapper div just to hold these 3 items. And, there may be a better way. It's very possible. You guys might come up with something else. That's completely doable. I think in my actual portfolio, I wrapped this image in a div as well, but we don't necessarily need to do that. We can get away with not doing that. It's perfectly fine. Okay, so now that we have the markup, we have the basic markup in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some meaningful names to my markup so that I can identify where the different areas are by their class names. Now, I know the course covers both IDs and classes, and if you guys do a search in the forums, you'll find that during the first phase of this thing, I tried to be thorough and answer people's questions very thoroughly. So all of my forum posts were books upon books of explaining things like CSS specificity and why that's important and how it works and things like that. So what I'm going to do is, without getting into the overly complex details of CSS specificity, just know that a class has the lowest weight in the CSS Specificity index. I'm trying not to mess up the words. So that's why it's always recommended to not even use IDs, because IDs have a higher specificity index. Then element selectors have a higher specificity index than IDs, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding. And all that specificity stuff has to do with how quickly the browser can render the page. So classes are always a better route to take. So I'm going to do class equals, and I'm just going to repeat it and call it header. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay. We know that the first image here inside of our header is also going to be a logo. Now, I'm going to name this in such a way that it allows for simplicity in building out CSS using a preprocessor called Sass. Don't worry about Sass right now, but as you see this, just kind of remember this naming scheme, and when you guys get into Sass, it'll make writing your Sass a whole lot simpler. I had to figure it out the hard way. So we know that this is going to be a logo, right? This is our logo image, right? So then I can also do a class on this image tag, and I can call it header image, right? Because that's what this is. This is the logo container, right? Holds our logo. This is the image that is the logo. Okay, does that make sense? And then this is like this is another class that is inside of our header that is like the text elements, right, that are inside of it, right? And then this h1 has a class as well, and it is the header, like this could be our name, header name. And then this paragraph tag also has a class, and this is also inside of our header, and this is the header, like job title? No, job title's too long. Just title. Title's fine. Okay? And now, to actually fill this information in, oh, this logo is going to be our name, Joe Masat. That's how you say my name. And I'm not actually going to go get a bunch of images. What I'm going to do instead is use a website called, I'm going to pull another browser window over here so you can go find it. It's called placeholder.com. Right? I'm not going to go get a bunch of images. So here's how placeholder works. All you need to do is use this link right here, http://via.placeholder.com. You use that link, and then you say how wide you want your image to be, the X, like the letter X, and then how high you want your image to be. So I'm just going to copy this. Okay. Well, I clicked on it. Let me go back. I don't want to click on it. I just want to copy it. Oh, it doesn't want to let me copy it. Copy link address. There we go. So I've copied it. I'm going to move this out of the way so it's not in the way. And then in the source attribute, I'm just going to paste it. Control V, paste. Command V on a Mac. Right? Now I don't want my logo to be 350 pixels wide by 150 pixels high. That's too big. I want my logo to be like 50 by 50. Super simple. So my header name, right? We know that that's going to be me, Joe Masat. Insert your name here, right? My header title, I'm going to be all super fancy and go senior front end web developer. Whoa, grunt end. I'm a grunt end web developer. No, I'm not going to do extraordinary. That's too much. Not that great. Should I hyphenate it? Front end? Should be front end? Front hyphen end? I don't know. I'll leave it like that. Right? You guys can put whatever you want in there. The reason I want this to be really long because I'm going to show you what happens when you have like super long text. Okay. All right. That covers naming our header section. Notice the naming scheme. It starts with a class of header. This is the parent container, right? Then I have a class that also starts with header, then a hyphen logo. And then my image also starts with header hyphen image. My next div, header hyphen text, by h1 header hyphen name, and the p header hyphen title. So it's a very smooth, common naming convention that goes on here. Starts with the parent container and it trickles down through all the elements in the parent container. And that allows for like simplicity in like building out Sass. At least that's what I found. It's a naming convention I use at work and it works really well. So plus it's fairly descriptive. I can just look at the class name. Like if I have to go back next year or 2 years from now and make a modification to any of this, I can look at these class names and I can say, oh, this class name is a header text. That must be the text that goes in the header. Right? I mean, I would think that that's header text goes in the header. I don't know, maybe not. Then I have my main tag, and I can give this a class of content because that is what this main tag holds, all of the actual page content. Okay. For the this image right here that we're going to use, let's pull the mockup back up. This big giant image. Let me turn off all of these red boxes. This big giant image in the center here, I think I mentioned this in the last video, it has a name in the industry called hero image, and that's why the label here for the layer is hero image, hero hyphen image. So again, I'm just going to use placeholder.com for my placeholder text. I'm going to copy this, copy, come over here to my image source, and just paste that in. And I want this to be I don't know, 480 pixels wide by, we'll say 250 pixels high. And I'll just give it an alt tag of awesome placeholder image. Woot. Okay. This image can also have a class. Now, the naming scheme that I followed up here, where everything starts with header and then all of the sub elements, child elements, have that header as well. I could do the same thing here. Like I could do that. I could say this is the content hero image responsive image thing. What I'm trying to show you here is that I can hyphenate this thing to death. But for me, in the things that I work on, I try to limit my hyphenation to one level, like this. Sometimes I'll do a third, but very rarely will I do that. I try to keep my class names very specific and, if I can say this word without messing it up, succinct, right? Try to anyway. Now, let's say I don't follow this pattern, this naming pattern, and I just say that this is the hero image. This would ideally be more specific to what this image actually is. And what I'm trying to show you here is I don't necessarily have to follow this same naming pattern that I use for my header. It's convenient here for the header to follow this naming pattern. It's convenient and it works pretty well. But sometimes when you get into situations like this, it doesn't work so well. I like this naming convention better, and it's perfectly fine. I can just create another class all by itself. The thing about Sass is that you can nest selectors, and that's why I follow this naming convention, because I create like this overarching class called header, and then I just nest the logo, the image, the text, the name, and the title inside of that. And it makes writing it very simple and succinct. But for this, I would create a class called content, right? And then this would just be a different class, hero image, all by itself, no problem. My section, I'll give it a class as well, and I'll just call it, I don't know. My main is content, so my section can be, do I want to follow the same naming convention? Oh, featured work. That was too easy, because that's what this is, the featured work section. In fact, my H2 needs some text, and we know that's going to be not heated work, not featured work, featured work. Okay, and this can actually be a class of content header, because that's what it is. It's the content header. Now, this is the wrapper div that holds all of my featured work divs, okay? But I already have a class of featured work, right? So this can be class featured, just featured, and that's it. Yeah, that'll work. Then this would be class featured item. Oops. Now, this naming convention because I know that in the future, this box is going to get a display of flex. And you'll see how this is going to work out when we start writing the CSS. So what happens is when you give a container a display property other than like block or inline, when you use one of the layout display properties, flexbox or grid, either one of them, the children of that container become the items of that layout property. So all of the children of the featured div will become flex items. If I used grid, which I could, then they would become grid items. And that's just a term that you use to refer to the children of the container that receives the layout property. Do I need to repeat that? You can rewind the video and listen to it again. So each one of these divs is going to be a class of featured item. Another handy feature of Visual Studio Code, once you've written a class once, it will give it to you as a code completion. Make things quicker. I'm going to follow the same kind of naming convention. I have a base class of featured. Now I have a featured item. Then this would be featured image, featured header, featured text. So it's going to follow the same kind of pattern. And this is the best thing since sliced bread right here. I'm going to hold the control key on my keyboard. In fact, let me check something because settings. I was doing some PHP stuff earlier. Explorer. I don't think I have it set in here. Oh, here it is. You need it if you're on Windows. You need to change this setting, just like I did. You click on this gear icon, and you go to settings, and it'll open this up. And the good thing is you can search settings, and what you want, just search for multi cursor. Multi cursor. There we go. So this is the default. The modifier to be used to add multiple cursors with the mouse. Control command maps to the control key on Windows and Linux, and it maps to the command key on Mac OS. You can see that the default is the Alt key, which does not work for me at all. I got to use the control key. So what you need to do in order to make this work is you just click this little pencil and it says edit. And when you click it, you get a flyout menu and it says, what do you want to set it to? If you're on Windows or Linux, you want control command. I would say even if you're on Mac, you want control command. I don't think you'd ever want to use alt. But if you edit this, if you select this item, it's going to populate it over here for you. This is your user settings file that gets saved. If you've never done this before, then yours is probably empty. There's nothing in it. So that's what you want to do. At least that's what I'm going to do. That's how mine is set up. or that's what I've done already, because you can see it's set the control command, because that's what I want it to be. So I'm just going to close this. Little hint for Visual Studio Code. Now I'm going to hold the control key on my keyboard, and I'm just going to click after my alt attribute on each of my image tags. And now I have multiple cursors, and I can say class is equal to featured, not item, but featured image. Right? Now that image needs a source attribute. So again, I'm just going to copy my placeholder.com placeholder image. And another cool thing with Visual Studio Code, I'm going to select the entire source attribute for the image, right? The whole thing. And then I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard, Command on a Mac, and I'm going to hit the D key. D as in dog. D as in Delta. And I do it once, and you can see that the next source attribute for the next image has been selected. And if I hit it again, it's going to give me the next one. And this is another way to add multiple cursors in Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to hit the right arrow once, and then the left arrow to go back. And then I'll Control V, Command V on a Mac to paste that in. And I just noticed that my hero image is 4,800 pixels wide. That's way too wide. But that's okay. So these little featured images, I want them to be 150 pixels tall by 480 pixels wide. Okay? And I'm going to change this back to 480, not 4,800. Hope you guys didn't follow that part in the video. We need alt attributes. Now, the thing about alt attributes is I could do multi-cursors, hold Control, and click. And I can just say featured image. And while that's completely viable and completely doable in the code, and the browser will be like, yeah, that's cool, no problem. The validator, on the other hand, oh, I think actually the validator will be cool with it too. But what won't be cool with it is accessibility, because it's a duplicate alt attribute, and it does not like that. So this is going to be featured image 1 and featured image 2, TO, and featured image 3. There we go. That way they're all different, and you know, if you guys don't care about accessibility or screen readers and that kind of thing, then you ain't got to worry about it. And then we need a title. First we need a class, right? Class equals featured header, right? Yes, that's fine. Featured header. What did I say? Featured title. Same thing. Featured title, featured header. Awesome. We'll call this awesome featured image. Awesomer. Awesome. Oh, that'll be the next one. And then for the paragraph, we need a class, and that's going to be featured description or something like that. Oh, text. That's what I said. Text makes more sense. Featured text. And I don't know. I think in the mockup or whatever, it's supposed to link out to like a website or something. We're just gonna put some placeholder stuff in here. Yeah, I guess we'll do that. We'll also add an anchor tag. Href is gonna equal, I don't know, nothing. And this will also get a class, and the class is going to be featured link. Right? Not featured link, just featured link. I'm making up words as I go. And we'll just put, I don't know, http://www.awesomeimage.com. That's not a real thing. I'm making that up too. So don't actually click it, because it'll give you some domain not found. Maybe the domain is found. Maybe that really exists. That'd be weird. Okay. So now we're just going to repeat all this. And rather than type it, you know what? I'm just going to be like, copy pasta. So give me the H3 and the P. Control C, Command V on a Mac. Paste that. And paste that. I could have used multi-cursor there, but this will be awesomer featured image, and it's going to go to awesomerimage.com because they're different. And this is going to be the awesomest featured image. I'm literally making this up as I go. Seriously, I did not think about this ahead of time. Awesomestimage.com, and there we go. So that covers like naming, like using class names. How do I say it? Using class names logically, right? I think that's the best way to describe this. You notice that I actually didn't ever use the content class as a anything. Just that's it, main class content, and that was it. I never actually used it again. My section is featured work, but the base class featured, is misspelled. Oh man, I bet you guys saw that the whole video and were like, change it. He's not going to change it. He's not going to catch it. I got it. Because I know how this video thing works. I've seen people make mistakes in coding videos and be like, ha ha ha. And then he's like, I'm going to pause this video, fix this error, and I'll be right back. I don't need to do that. I just caught it. Okay. Featured item, featured image. So it just kind of cascades. Oh, I used the term. It cascades, just like your CSS does. Now, I kind of gave it away because I was going to get into that when I get into the styling. But the way you write your styles is going to not necessarily, I don't want to say it's going to match your markup, but it's going to flow in that same order. Like I'll start at the top of my style sheet and create my class of header. If I ever need it, I'll put something in it. Then I'll create a class of header-logo and a class of header-image, header-text, header-name, header-title, and just go down my style sheet. Now what I'll do in order to show you like a common workflow, right? Now that I've got this done, I'm just going to save this file so I can save it, or so I can preview it. And I could go back to here, right, in my Windows Explorer or the Finder in Mac. I can come in here and I can double click this and we'll open in my browser. But I want to show you guys Live Server because it's amazing. I can just right click on this page and open with Live Server. There's also a keyboard shortcut, Alt-L-O. I've never actually used that shortcut, but I guess that's what that is. Alt-L, I think. They're missing a, if it's Alt-L-O, they're missing a plus there. Well, anyway, I'll just select this, open with Live Server, and it will spin up in the wrong browser window the page like so. And sure enough, the markup that we've created is the markup that we're seeing. Oops. Yeah, let's do that. And then I'm going to put this here. If you guys didn't know, this is like a cool feature in Windows 10. Actually, I think it started in Windows 7. You can pin stuff to the side. So we do have a header logo image here. It is 50 by 50, and you can tell because it does. Trust me, it says 50 by 50 in there. I promise you it does. We have our H1 header name, my name. We have a paragraph of text underneath, senior front-end web developer. We have our hero image. It is 480 by 250. You can see 480 by 250. We have an H2 featured work right here, featured work. And then we have all our containers with our image, title, and text and link. And there's the image, 480 by 150, which is what we said. There's our awesome featured image and our awesomeimage.com. I'm gonna go get the domain really fast if it's available. I'm just kidding. Here's our next image, 480 by 150. Awesomer featured image, awesomerimage.com. And 480 by 150, awesomest featured image, and awesomestimage.com. So that takes care of the markup and some cool little tricks in the editor, right? Now I'm going to pull this back out so it's not pinned. And you'll notice that this is all aligned to the left, but that's not really what we want. We want our markup to look like this. We want it to be like this, not aligned to the left. And we'll get to that. This is already an hour in, so we'll get to that in the next video with styling this and making it look pretty and how to go about doing that, because that's going to be kind of in depth and take a little bit longer. Okay, so I hope that was clear and somewhat concise. Maybe not. I stumbled through it a little bit in some places, but like I said, I don't have a script for this thing. I'm just kind of winging it as I go. That's how you take the analysis of the mockup that you've done, right, where we drew out all these boxes. That's how you take this analysis and you turn it into actual working HTML. That is the process. So if you guys got any questions or anything, you don't have to follow this naming convention, but I find it simple and easy and concise. So yeah, got any questions, comments, concerns? Throw something in the comments or hit me up on Slack or shoot me a message on the forums. Either way, or in my Discord, which is still going. I think I actually got people hanging out in there right now. No, not so many. Well, anyway, there it is. Markup. Amazing. And some Visual Studio Code stuff. Also amazing. So yeah, anything you guys want to know with this part of it, just let me know. I'm actually going to stop this and go right into the CSS because it's not that late here. Okay? So I'll see you guys in the next video.